So today I'll be sharing all the details regarding this brief introduction of semiconductor industry and what all we do as an analog IC design engineer. I'll briefly share with you the contents that I have for this presentation. So we'll be going with the history of semiconductor and the journey beyond. Then what are the industry trends and the market drivers? Then I'll introduce you to this to the analog world, which needs no introduction actually. Then I'll be sharing with you the state of the art, what is the evolution in this field, what are the career paths and job opportunities, and some introduction to the design aspect of it, what we do as an analog IC design engineer. So I'll start with history of semiconductors. So in 1904, there was an invention of vacuum tube. So when Edison invented bulb, he actually saw there's one more phenomena happening inside, and he saw the current flowing between the two junctions of his bulb, where when he gave a positive potential across one. So that's how the concept of diode came into the picture. Then finally, the invention of vacuum tube happened. After that, in 1946, a first general purpose computer was made using these vacuum tubes. And then proceeding after 2 years, the junction type transistor was invented, BJT. And Japan, Sony, was the first to release a transistor radio in 1955. Now, basically, trying to make their process efficient, their manufacturing efficient, they came up with a method called basically a phenomenon. They discovered a phenomenon which was called tunneling. So, and that led to the invention of a Saki diode, which was actually a very important, which came out to be very important in the large scale integrated circuits. And then in 1959, Jack Kilby at Texas Instruments, he finally he had a patent on integrated circuits, and that's how the IC world started off. This is a picture which actually shows you what was the size of one transistor in 1950s and how like some billions of transistors we have fit in 2010 in that same size. So this is a journey which the semiconductor industry has taken, and they have been very successful at it. So this is the market drivers, where what all the semiconductor industry, what are the markets, what all it constitutes of. So the major, as you can see, memory, logic, micro components, basically your microprocessors, analog ICs, and OSDs. OSDs are optoelectronics, sensors, and discretes. So you can see the percentage of analog rising every year on. And even if you take memory or micro components or OSD, all of them involves some bit of analog in it. So basically, analog is something which you just cannot eliminate if you want to have an IC. It is a very integral part of the full system. So these are the market drivers, basically, who all the customers are. So as you can see, computers are the number one, where in semiconductor industry, where your processors, your digital, your logic, all these things come into the picture. Then communication circuitry. I was explaining about the automotive and industrial. So the automotive industry, as we know, is shifting towards the electronic vehicles, and the chipsets involved there. Every vehicle is going to be smart now, and all the ICs involved there, and the sensors is a major part of it, and we cannot do without sensors. And if sensors is into the picture, this means analog is there, and you just cannot go without it. Then there's industrial market, where industry 4.0 is the revolution, is the major driving factor there, where every industrial machinery will be connected, and it will be a very efficient and smart manufacturing. Then, of course, the consumer products here, smartphones, power banks, etc. So as you can see, it's a very big market, approximately $50 billion market. So out of which analog constitutes somewhere around 50 to 60 billion dollars, and it's a very major chunk of it. And the company I work for actually is one of the market leaders and hold a share of around 20% in this market. This needs no introduction actually. So as you know, if you look around, you listen, you feel, the world is analog. It's a superposition of all the continuous signals at several frequencies with different amplitudes. And if you look at your body itself is actually a collection of sensors which can actually perceive, which can actually detect frequencies from the range of tens of hertz, which is our hearing, to hundreds of terahertz, which is you're seeing the light. which it detects, the photoreceptors. Now, there are also the chemical sensors in our body. All that information which is collected by our body is actually processed by our central processor, which is the brain. And that's how we build a perception of this world around us. Now, this concept is the very foundation of smart electronic systems that you encounter in your everyday life. Now, the difference being the processor that is there inside is the analog processor. And the processor which our body has is an analog processor, which is much more efficient in terms of power, area, and processing speeds. All of them combined, because processing speeds can be huge with today's supercomputers, but the power it will take will also be humongous. Now, today's all the sensors, they collect the information, if you see around, there are all that information is being used to run AI ML algorithms to actually predict what's going to happen next, and how these sensors can make our everyday lives better and easier in a smart way. All this processing requires a very high speed processor, and that is actually very that does not come for free. That is very expensive in terms of area, in terms of power, in terms of cost. Now, this is a fun fact that I want to share with you guys. The amount of energy that is required to power computation by the world's fastest supercomputer would be enough to power a building. The human brain achieves the same processing speeds with the same energy as is required to charge a dim light bulb. And all that is because our brain is analog. And the reason behind this is, now, of course, you'll be thinking that, okay, this seems like too good to be true. Well, actually, it is. So when we talk about analog processors, we actually, for efficiency, we actually give away some of the accuracy. So analog processors, they actually work on probabilistic models. It's a very good example of probability coming into the picture. So the decisions are made based upon the probability of something happening, and that's how our brain works actually. So we give away some of the accuracy to achieve that efficiency, and today's system and where the sensors are involved, that can be actually when can be a very useful technique to reduce the power consumption and the area at the same point of time. Because also the power is a very important concern today. We have moved way beyond the computing capabilities, but the bottleneck that we today have is to make the systems portable with all that processing speeds is battery. We have not since the research is going on a lot in that area, but still we don't have something which is very high energy density materials. And there are some researches going on, and pretty soon they will be out there in the market, but that is something which is actually a bottleneck today. Now, what is analog design? What all things are involved in it? I'll be sharing that from the next slide. This is a basic analog system. So if you see this, any analog signal, our speech, the images, the light, anything, any analog signal, if you take it, it goes through an analog. So analog signal is actually has to be processed to make sense out of it, and that processing is done using a digital processor. Now, from the analog realm to digital realm, there needs to be some sort of conversion happening, and the ADC, the analog to digital converter, takes care of it. Similarly, at the transmitting end, we need all that information that we have in digital domain to be converted into analog domain, and there DAC comes into the picture, which helps us in converting those digital signals into the analog signal, and then we perceive that analog signal. Now, to give ADC as the input, you need to have a very good signal which has very low noise, a good amplitude signal which has very low noise. And the term that we use for it is SNR. You might have read about it or listened to it in your undergraduate courses. So SNR means signal to noise ratio. Now, as analog designers, it's our job when we get an analog signal, the amplifier circuit that we make, that circuit's job is to amplify the signal, and then filtering is there to reduce the noise, and that signal goes to the analog to digital converter. Analog to digital converter then convert that signal into digital domain, ones and zeros, and the digital processor takes that information, makes sense out of it, and then throws an output in the digital domain itself. Then the digital to analog converter converts that information into analog. Then some filtering is done again, then it is amplified again and given to it as your, for example, your a very basic example today we are using, like microphone and the speakers. Microphone is your input side transducer and the speakers are your output side. Everything in between that is happening to get that voice to your ears is actually this, which I explained you right now. It's amplified, it's filtered, it's converted to digital, then processing happens, then to analog again, and then to you guys. So this is a basic analog system, and this is the core of it. I mean, if you understand all the fundamentals regarding this, you are basically a very good analog. You will be a very successful analog design engineer. Now, what are the knobs that we play with? What are the things that goes on in our head all the time when we are actually designing circuits? So this is basically a engineering world where we try to make some knob perform better than the other one at the expense of the other. Like I want high gain, then I have to give some away some of the bandwidth, and I want high gain bandwidth. Then there are other ways that I have to do. Then I have to then there's supply voltage, where today's world. I mean, all the sensor, all the handheld devices, they tend to go for lower and lower power supply voltages. Now the digital has gone to around 7 nanometers, 5 nanometers is already in the way, but analog, the as you go down those nodes, the analog becomes very difficult task because of the sheer amount of parasitics involved. So analog work, in analog design, we currently don't go below 28 nanometers because the foundries, basically all the manufacturing techniques that we have are actually very efficient for 65 nanometer and 40 nanometer nodes, and everything is driven by profits. Of course, it's a business, and everything is driven by profits. So the reason we don't move to lower nodes is basically because it's the manufacturing is not very efficient yet, and it takes a lot of money. Now we play with these knobs where noise, power, linearity, gain, voltage swing, your bandwidth, speed, all those. So according to the specifications provided by the user and your system design, you actually tend to put your design some. Let's say it's you want it to be very power efficient, and you don't actually care about, okay, what is the speed of the circuit, or what is the supply. So you choose somewhere here your design to be where noise is high. I mean, you tend to give away all the other things just to have a very ultra low power system. And similarly for noise, where in your RF circuits, when your signal is very less, very its amplitude is very low, power is very low, you want to get rid of all the noise. That's why the amplifier I showed you here, that amplifier in RF circuits is called low noise amplifier. So you might have heard of it. The I think undergraduates, there is a course on RF circuit design. If you have not taken it, please take it. It's a very good course, and also spends good amount of time on electromagnetism as well. If you are interested in going to universities, go for research. So yeah, in basic idea about what our world is, it's about these knobs. This is our playground. This is what we play with. Now, it's a very interesting thing, actually. A very famous Stanford professor came up with this. So it's a spice monkey problem, basically. What we know is that large number of monkeys randomly arranging characters never be able to write an interesting book or a sentence, for that matter. But what we forget is, even if a large number of monkeys are there, they cannot even, and randomly tweaking circuits, they will never manage to design a robust optimized IC. You see, this whole octagon is a very, actually, it's not an easy feat. I mean, if you know your subject, everything is easy. But this is something which takes a lot of analysis on our part, and this is something which randomness cannot achieve. So you need to have a proper understanding about the underlying concepts, the basics of it. Once your basics are good, then industry is there to help you learn, because every day in this field you will be learning something new. It's all about the perspective. There is no one solution to any circuit. It's all about your creativity, your perspective, how you look at a signal, how you want to shape that signal, and how you are putting your transistors together. That is actually quite fascinating for me, The reason being, this three-legged device, this transistor, has actually revolutionized humanity. If you see, right, this for us, for any outsider, this arrangement of transistors, which we call a circuit, it will make no sense, right? So it's like a stroke of brush for us analog designers. Of what a stroke of brush for a painter is, that is what a transistor is for us. We arrange those transistors in a way which is beautiful, which actually makes sense and gives you something which makes sense. Now, Spice, you all of you might have heard of it. You might have had basically some background using a Spice simulator to simulate a circuit you designed. If you are in your second year, it'll don't worry, it'll be there in your third or fourth year. So Spice is nothing but a calculator. So whatever you evaluate, whatever analysis you have done for your circuit, whatever calculations that you have done to make sure that they make sense, they are right, you use Spice and not the other way around. So if you know what the answer is, there is actually no need to simulate. So I mean, but that requires a lot of experience because there are a lot of variables involved. Like because every time you go to manufacture a chip, there will be manufacturing defects as well, and those defects we say in terms of yield. What is the yield percentage? So because there will be variations, your threshold voltage, for example, will change according to the foundry, which is actually manufacturing your IC, which is taking care of the, and that is a very not, it's not a trivial, it's a very critical job. And we take some margin that okay, this much, let's say I want some 500 millivolts of threshold voltage. My simulator is giving me that, but when it goes on silicon, silicon is the material which your ICs are made. All the current ICs are made. It's there is germanium also, but they are actually used for your government and the radar things, because it's a market which is not very, basically it's not as researched upon as silicon. And the foundries today, everything is very much cost efficient in terms of silicon. One more fun fact, I don't have that in my slides. Silicon is the most researched material in human history. It's the only material that we know almost everything about, and, and it's very fascinating. That's why, that is the reason we are actually we go for silicon, because it's cost effective. All the manufacturing techniques, everything has been actually made very efficient with respect to silicon. But we get a lot of good performance through germanium transistors. There are other transistors as well, but they are not that cost efficient. That's why they don't see the consumer electronics market. Okay, so that was a little bit of deviation. I thought that was necessary to convey to you. Now you see, it's when you design a circuit, when you to go to for it to go into finally into the shape of silicon. When you design a circuit, it needs to be tested quite intensively. There are a lot of tests involved, which are actually very important for any company. Why? Because any mask, because these manufacturing, these foundries are actually, it's a very, it's a very expensive thing to do because of the sheer amount of intricacies and details involved in it. But 90 nanometer, it's very small. You can imagine that. I mean, no, you can't imagine that. It's very small. So basically, once if something goes wrong in your circuit, you have not evaluated it properly, and something goes wrong, what happens is you end up losing millions of dollars, because that is what it takes for an IC to come to you after getting manufactured. That is what it takes. And it actually takes some months, and it's not just your one time hit that you get in the money department. It's also the time, which is actually very important in terms of today's world, where everything is very competitive. Every company is trying to give products one before the other. Everyone is actually working very hard to, it's all actually about time. And when can you tape out? Tape out is the term that we use when we make a circuit and we put it on silicon. So if your chip doesn't work, it's a very big headache for for the company, for the designer as well. And because this somewhere tells you that okay, something has gone bad, or you, or maybe there is some things that have been missed out while giving this for the silicon. Some incomplete work has been there, and then there is analysis done to actually find out what went wrong, and that will take another couple of months. So it's a cycle which takes a lot of time, and no one wants that. No one wants their chip to be dead when it arrives. That's why it's important that you simulate it extensively. But when you design something, it should not be simulator driven. It should be your calculations, your evaluation, and that is what I'll be trying to teach you in this course, where you can actually, from one single transistor, you can go to design hundreds of thousands of transistors in an analog IC. That is the goal of this course.